Content warning: discussion of flashbacks, hallucinations, and trauma. Hello everybody, this is DID Hatchery. I have dissociative identity disorder and I make videos about my life because I want to share the internal experience and a little bit of knowledge about it. So today I'm going to be discussing hallucinatory emotional flashbacks because for the last day that I've had a new type of flashback that I've been experiencing, and it's a hallucinatory one. So let's discuss. Well, when you have a trauma disorder, a dissociative disorder like DID, which is traumagenic, you can have flashbacks, all kinds of flashbacks. You know, you can have the full like Vietnam style everything flashback, or you can have other things, somatic. In this case, we're going to talk about emotional flashbacks. And when you have an emotional flashback, you don't have any of the visual content or the storyline of what the cause of this emotion is. So oftentimes when the flashback starts, you don't even know it's a flashback. It takes time. And so yesterday, what happened? Around like noon yesterday, I was battling on Twitter over politics because I think it's very important. I have certain alters that do that. And just, I guess the flow of information was not positive and it triggered us into a severe emotional flashback. Now, right now, I could still be in this flashback because emotional flashbacks, they come in waves, they ebb and they flow. I have moments where I'm above the water like I am now, and I'm in touch with reality, and I'm not feeling the same pain and the same bizarre feelings that I feel when I'm in the flashback, but I often have like a slight lump in my throat, which indicates that, for me anyway, that this flashback may or may not be over. And right now I still have a little bit of that lump in my throat, so. But I just really wanted to talk about this right now because it's happening to me. And so since about noon yesterday, I've been having this ebb and flow. And so right now I'm at the top. I'm aware, but I can easily just dip down and I will start to know that I'm having a flashback and I'll be like, this is a flashback, this is a flashback, it's okay. But then I'll just hit some sort of arbitrary line, which once I dip below that, I lose my reality is gone. The reality of the flashback overtakes my reality. And I start to believe that my real reality is what was always the false reality, and that the flashback reality is the absolute truth. And I know it sounds strange, but even though you ebb and flow and you come in and out of it, when you're in it, you believe it. And I mean, you just do. The part of your brain that is like, calm down, this isn't real. It just, for me, it just disappears. It disappears at a certain point. And so added to that recently, the type of emotions you have when you have an emotional flashback, they can vary, but they're definitely often self-directed. In my case, I always feel like everybody hates me. Everybody hates me. Everybody on earth hates me. People are only tolerating me for some sort of benefit, to get something from me or to use me for something. That's a very fundamental part of my typical flashbacks. And you just have a bunch of just really horrible feelings, like you feel shame, you can feel guilt, you can a lot of anger, but these feelings are extremely heightened. It's not normal anger, it's not normal shame, it's exponentially heightened. And so, my typical flashback is that feeling that everybody hates me. But this flashback that been having since like noon yesterday, when I'm down into the deep part of it, it obviously makes me feel like everyone hates me because that's just inevitable. But there was just a different quality to it, something I didn't recognize. something that made me aware that this particular flashback was different from the ones I've been experiencing. So usually, most often so far, with my experience with emotional flashbacks, I usually flash back to a certain period in my life, and that's 10 to 14, because that's the feeling I got, was that feeling I used to have when I lived at a certain house, okay? And so I always knew where that flashback was coming from. This is a whole nother ballgame. Whatever this flashback is, it does not go to that age. I suspect it could go to a much younger age, because what ended up happening was, at first I was just really upset about politics, but abnormally upset, not normal upset, okay? Like abnormally upset about politics. And I utilize crisis centers because that has been a fundamental part of my survival since I was in my 20s. So I called the crisis center that I typically call. I know a lot of the counselors there. They're very kind to me. And I basically just freaked out about politics for like 45 minutes, and it was uncontrollable, and I was terrified. I was terrified. The thoughts I was having, I don't want to think about them right now because I could easily dip back in potentially. I don't know if it's over yet. That's all I'm saying. So I was terrified about politics because a dictatorship is never good. Let's just put it that way. And so that went on for a long time. Me just thinking I was angry about politics and scared about politics and all the other horrible feelings that come with that. I think what happened is this idea that a dictatorship could happen flashed me back to maybe hospitals, you know? In my opinion, I have lived under dictatorial circumstances in America, because when I was 28 years old and when I was around 33, 2 times I was made a ward of the state of Florida, losing all of my civil rights. I had no control over anything in my life. They could do anything they wanted to me. They actually, when they declared me incompetent, I was picked up from a hospital in a van, and in that van there was a cage. Okay, so I was handcuffed and walked to the van. I was put in the van in a cage, a little cage over one seat of the van. And then I was handcuffed to that cage, and I was driven for over an hour to a place that I was terrified of. And that was extremely traumatizing. But that was a big, you don't have to commit crimes in America to lose everything. Let me just say that much. So the concept of there being a dictatorship here is too much for me. I have lived under a lot of dictatorial circumstances, I will say, in the mental health care system. And so it's just not something I'm going to be able to handle very well if this comes to pass, okay? Because people don't realize there's a lot of privilege out there, because people haven't experienced, some people have not experienced a lot of bad things in their life, but anything can happen to you. Just know that. Anything. And so I know that's a fact, because I've had anything happen to me throughout my life, many times, okay? Okay, so that's what I guess triggered the flashback. And so then what followed was, it was like my head physically expanded to the size of like a large fishbowl. None of this is going to make sense to you, by the way, because describing this is impossible. Words literally fail. I cannot figure out a way to convey what really happened to me. So I'm giving you literally the best approximation I can do. And so my head it blew up, and it felt like this fishbowl that everyone could see through, but there were like 1,000 fish darting in a bunch of directions, and they were just smashing into each other, and there was just like a violence to it, and a confusion, and just an overwhelm and an anxiety to it. And then I felt like I was looking around, and the walls of my apartment suddenly seemed elongated, very big, very high, just so big that I didn't think I would ever escape them. And At the same time, things felt unreal, yet hyper real. Hyper real in the sense that it's surreal. So there was an unreal quality about it and a hyper real surrealism about it. And then I felt like nothing was real. Nothing's real. The walls started to look translucent to me. Things started to seem foggy. I really thought nothing here was real, and that my real life was the false life, and that I was actually sealed away from everybody, and sort of like Sylvia Plath, like a bell jar. I was sealed away from everybody, and everybody was going about their business, and I was forever locked alone in the furthest depths of aloneness. It was horrible. And it took me a long time to realize I was in a flashback. But I eventually did. A few hours into it, I realized it was a flashback, and I reached out to some friends of mine. I was just basically, I couldn't ground myself. Because when you have an emotional flashback, so you guys know, like the Vietnam style, where you have the visual, audio, emotions, everything, very, very heightened, very extreme. Well, with an emotional flashback, the emotional aspect is just as extreme as that other flashback, but it's only the emotional aspect. And so, very extreme feelings. And I'm losing track, so I apologize if I repeat myself. And so, that's what I've been going through. And I like to explain to people the internal experiences of DID, because I think a lot of the internal experience of DID can't be studied properly, can't be researched properly. So this is my attempt to leave a document of what it was like for me as somebody with DID, when I had flashbacks, or when I had switches, or when I did whatever, what those feelings were, what drove it, what it really was. Because I think if people understood this disorder more, they would understand that it's absolutely real. So I reached out to a few friends because I could not ground myself, because when you have a flashback, it has to run itself out like a tape. You can't stop it. You can calm yourself, you can ground yourself, but it's gonna go until it's done. And so a friend of mine responded, and luckily they helped me. And then my psychologist called me, luckily, and we did some very intense grounding exercises and different types of visualizations and other things. And that helped me ground. I wasn't completely grounded, but it helped a lot. And then since that point, I had a few waves, maybe 3 waves of it. But after I talked to my psychologist and we did these exercises, they've been better, though I can feel like the minor wave and the minor low and the minor wave. But the advice for when you do have an emotional flashback, not that I can follow it yet. I can't even follow it yet, because when I get immersed in it, I believe it. So I can't follow the advice yet. But the advice is, tell yourself this is a flashback if you're able. Try to soothe yourself. Try to do things that are calming. Self-care. Do something familiar and comfortable and soothing, and talk to yourself and say, this is just a flashback. This will pass. It'll just take time. And that's the advice that I got off the internet. So you can always look it up, because I am no professional and I'm not here to be a professional. I'm here to express what happens to me and illustrate my experience of it, so that other people who have this disorder may relate to it, and that maybe that people who don't believe in this disorder might start to understand it. And so anyway, I hope everybody else is well. I hope this flashback is over. And love you guys, love you. So see you soon. Okay, bye-bye.